What a treat. Today we have Jenny Gore Dwyer, who you know from Deadliest Catch and probably amongst Instagram land. And if you've met her at PME or anywhere else in the world, you absolutely just fall in love with her because she is just so kind and warm and genuine. And we couldn't ask for anything better than that. Jenny has been such a huge support of the POCF community since the beginning. And she really was such a fire and such an inspiration for me to know that I was doing the right thing, was on the right track. And I do give her credit for that. And we probably met almost 4 or 5 years ago, or online. And then we met at PME for the first time last year in person. And she agreed to come and speak to us today about finances, which I know is, is a topic not many people want to discuss. It's money. People get funny about money, right? But we don't, because we're POCFs and we got to talk about it because that's how it goes. This episode is full of incredible stories and great advice, or, not just advice. I'm going to say Jenny shares what worked for them. And I want to share it with y'all to see if this is something that might work for you, and also to give you hope for the future if you're planning to stay in the fishing industry, and just to learn how they've been able to build their legacy, their fleet. It's really, really incredible. So this is going to be a 2-part series. This first one up, I hope you enjoy it. Here's Jenny. I'm Megan Waldrop, host of the Partners of Commercial Fishermen podcast, an extension of an online community for partners to connect and feel less alone. Our podcast invites fishermen, family, friends, and supporters of the industry to learn, laugh, vent, and hear stories about this incredibly unique way of life. What do you say? Let's dive in. Yay! We have Jenny Gore Dwyer, a matriarch, I say, of our community. It's been such a huge support. Jenny, thank you so much for being here today and talking about money stuff. I mean, getting down to business. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to be here and happy to share whatever I can to help generations out.
Yay. I mean, honestly, speaking of generations, I mean, you and Pat have built, not only one boat, but now a fleet, and have had a successful business that you've been able to pass on to your children, and your Sean's now running the business and you're also running the business, but to be able to have a legacy like that, in such a huge fishery like Dungeness crab and huge boats is so inspiring, and also making us realize, like, okay, there's a way to there's a path for success here, even if we're feeling like we're being stretched. Like I was mentioning a podcast before, Bristol Bay right now, where people are feeling it with the low numbers and figuring out, okay, what do we do next with our money? And so having you on is such a huge get. And thank you so much again for your time. So I wanted to just jump in and start by discussing how you and Pat even learned to run a fishing business. And, we don't have to get into particulars, but how the heck did y'all figure out, how did you even get started? Like whenever you got the boat, then how did you decide what you were going to do with your money?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. When Pat and I first met, we fell in love, like I think probably the second day that we knew each other and knew that we wanted to be together. And Pat had decided that he wanted to buy a boat, and his father worked for a company called Birkenwald Incorporated, and he was the accountant for this company. And the gentleman who owned the company was also interested in getting invested in the fishery. And it was just one of those things that Pat's dad was talking to Mr. Smith, and it all came together. So when we bought our first boat, Mr. Smith was a silent partner in our business. He helped us get a loan from the bank, and was just a silent partner in the business. So that's how we got started. It was very fortunate, and we're forever grateful to Mr. and Mrs. Smith for helping us get our start. Kind of an unusual way. And again, we just feel very, very fortunate. So we had 7 years to pay off the personal note that Mr. Smith also underwrote for us. So it was just a matter of getting things together and going. And when we started, When we first left the dock, we had one other crew member with us, and we were going up to do herring, starting in Southeast Alaska and then all the way up to Nome. And we left the dock and we're like, holy smokes, what are we doing here? So it just grew from there.
I love that. I love the newness and that feeling of, well, the love, first of all, is palpable between y'all. And it's just beautiful to learn your love story over the years. And Jenny has 3 blogs that she wrote for us. It's on POCFpride.com, and I'm gonna link it in the show notes, but it was just such a beautiful story, and Jenny's writing is amazing. So I highly recommend y'all check that out. And I want to quote something from Jenny's pieces right now. She said, to summarize, Jenny said, some of the other challenges were unsteady income, raising kids when your partner is at home, and raising kids when they aren't home. Every day, the focus was on the business. Unsteady income. Did I mention unsteady income? Which I love that. You said, we figured it out because this was our dream, our employment, and our passion, a business that was to be ours and to support our soon-to-be family. We knew the business would define who we were, and it would make or break us. It was big stuff for a 25 and a 27-year-old. I mean, 25 and 27, first of all, it's like incredible that you guys were mature enough to actually get this together like that. So bravo.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. So, okay, you get off, you're on the boat, you're going, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And then you get your first paycheck. So how did you navigate that? I mean, did you guys already have a plan in place of how you were going to do financials? Were you guys on a similar idea about money? How did that work for y'all?
Well, again, we were fortunate, and Pat's dad, who was an accountant, said that he would handle, the books for us, which was fabulous because that was back in the day where everybody worked with the big green ledger books. And, Pat's dad set up a system for us and it worked really well. We would get paid from the fish companies, and it would go into the account, and we would, because we were on the boat, Pat's dad would kind of do the daily tasks of paying bills and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. When we were home, Pat took over that process. I mean, he oversaw it while his dad was doing it. But it was just, honestly, we had a good foundation to start out with how businesses are run because of Pat's dad. Again, another unique aspect that kind of just helped us get on our way. And from that, we just kind of, just rolled with however we could roll with it. When I was home I went out on the boat with Pat for the first 3 years, 4 years. And when Pat was gone and I was home with Brenna and Sean, it was always a little tricky because Pat's dad kind of had the bank account and the money. So I would have to ask him for money, and it was always very awkward. And because I didn't know if he was thinking, geez, I just gave you $500 a week ago, what are you doing with that money? And I'm like, I'm buying groceries, that's all I'm doing. And so we did eventually set up a system where we would make, depending on how the income was coming in on the fishery side, how often we would have money just deposited into into my account that I did the household stuff with.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so Pat's dad was an accountant. Was he an accountant for other commercial fishing operations? So he was not. Okay.
He was not. No, he was not. He was the accountant for Birkenwald, and it was a wine and beer distributorship, and it was the largest one on the West Coast at the time. So, I mean, he knew his numbers, and I think that's really important to know in any business.
Yeah, yeah. And so, for example, some fishermen I've learned, and go do the LLC and they pay themselves a salary. Did you guys do that route of having the business pay you a salary, or was it, like you said, did it fluctuate with the seasons?
We tried to do that as much as we could, but a lot of times there were things that would come up, and as we always invested back into the company. That was Pat's main goal. It was like, we didn't do a lot of other investments outside of our company because, this was our livelihood, and this was our income. And there were times where, we couldn't take Pat's full salary. And it was just a lot of sometimes credit card living. But we both knew that we would, it's just what we had to do at the time. And I don't recommend that now with interest rates the way they are. But it was just a way that we were able to make it work and move forward. And Pat's dad was very good about keeping us on track.
So hiring and finding a CPA that you trust is number one. This is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
So is that an accountant duty, or was that also kind of borderline bookkeeping that he was doing? Both.
He was doing both. I mean, he was doing both. The bookkeeping, like I said, I still have the big green ledger books that he used to do all his work on, and how the accounts were set up, and income in, income out, or expenses out. And so again, our situation was a little unique, I think, compared to other businesses that were starting up at the same time we were.
Yeah. But I love that the fact that the theme is always, that I've spoken with other POCFs who've been in it for 30, 40 years, is always budgeting. It's always number one. They're like, and their advice was to budget on your leanest season. So you're never, living on high on the hog one year and then you're just struggling the next, which Chris and I have definitely, we've gone through that journey. And now I feel like we're finally getting our footing. But yes, the bookkeeping and the accountant, and the bookkeeping is usually a task that falls onto the partners of commercial fishermen. And then you really get to learn, oh, I am a part of this business, whether I knew it was going to be or not. And for me, it was intimidating at first because of my own personal relationship with money. And then now that I've researched and spoken with people like you and others that have gone through it, and just you're being so candid and transparent. I really appreciate that about how you guys have gone through it. It makes things feel less scary. So I'm going to thank you on behalf of all the POCFs for just letting us know how you all did it, because that's really what it's all about. It's like, is there a right or wrong way? It's not necessarily. It's just what works for you, as long as you're not going to get into worse debt, right?
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And Pat always used to say, I mean, when things were lean and tender rates had gone down, he was like, all right, well, we made it through that year when we didn't think we were going to be able to. So, you feel good about moving through the next year, because you feel like, oh my gosh, we were at the very bottom and we were able to do it. So I think you're exactly right. Work on the lean years.
Yeah. It's like the lean years are the learning experience.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'd love to talk about investing back into the fishing business and what that looked like for y'all. So, because you had one boat for how many years did you have one boat?
We had one boat for 20-ish years.
Okay. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
No, and because I love the story of how you've built the fleet, and we're going to get into that for sure. But I want to talk about just how you started off with that one boat. So what did investing back into that business look like for y'all? I mean, just the basic, like, what did it mean to put money back into the business?
For us, it just meant we never took money out really to do. I mean, we never really traveled a lot. We never, bought huge toys. I mean, Pat did later on when we had a little bit more money, but um, every dollar was focused on the business. And by the time, we'd kind of settled into a routine, and we figured things out. We just were, both of us were agreed that everything stayed in the business, because like you never knew, okay, what's going to happen this year. We always wanted to have cash on hand in case, oh my gosh, we've blown an engine, or oh my gosh, the season has been closed early, and so we always tried to operate with having as much cash on hand as we could. And that enabled us to kind of grow our business, because we did have cash on hand. And I will say it was tough, and there were times where I was super annoyed, because you'd see other people taking all these vacations, and you're like, when do we get to do that? But looking back on it now, especially now after Pat has passed away, and we're still able to grow and be in this business, it was just the best thing we could have done.
So my next question was, what did you feel like you excelled at, and what would you do differently? And it sounds like having cash on hand was one of the tops.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, once we kind of got into a routine, and then also Pat started working a full-time job with Northwest Fisheries that grew into Trident Fisheries. So we had another source of income coming in. So we were able to mostly live off of that salary that Pat was bringing in. And that really enabled us to kind of just keep cash on hand in the company. And, again, kind of a unique part of our story is that, he had this side gig going on that really let us keep the money in the company.
Yeah. And so the side gig, love that it was still in the industry. And then, so it was a full-time position. However, they let him have time off to go fish. Is that how that worked?
Well, by that time, he wasn't going out on the boat anymore.
Okay.
We had a skipper who was running the boat for us, Ian Pitzman, and he ran the boat, and we paid him, and that was it was just kind of this great growing time, and when the kids were little, and you're feeling successful, and it was just a great time, but that's how we were able to do it.
That's super interesting. That makes so much sense. I know a lot of people are like, oh, light bulb moments of how to continue this fishing business while you're still able to do other things and bring in income.
Right.
I have a couple of people in our private community that are actually working on that and hiring a skipper and things like that. It's fascinating. Love that. So how do you now prepare for a low or no season? Do you feel like after the years, do you have a different way that you prepare than you did before?
I don't really think so. I mean, our theory is still cash on hand, and it's interesting now in the crab industry, without having any opilio season for 2 years, and questionable about this year. It's going to be interesting navigating, this upcoming year as far as what we do. Hopefully there'll be a little king crab season, and we'll have a little income from that. So again, it's just going back to our basic theory of, the money that we're making while we're tendering. I mean, there's no money going out for anything else other than what is required. And we will just, again, Pat's theory, keep cash on hand. So that will help us get through the winter. And, fortunately, before the whole crab thing, we were able to do a lot of maintenance on the boats. So there's not a lot of heavy maintenance that's coming up. And that was the other thing that Pat was really good at, was keeping a maintenance schedule. You maintain constantly, and that way, hopefully you avoid any big breakdowns. Of course, there's always something that comes up, but the fact that he felt strongly about keeping everything maintained, I think also kept us financially stable, because there weren't a lot of huge things that did come up.
That makes sense. I love that you guys found what worked and you stuck with it, and it's still giving and flourishing for your business. And that's amazing. And I want to know, outside of having your built-in, which I love, bookkeeper and accountant, that's so great. What did you have any other outside resources that were helpful when you guys began, or maybe now, or maybe when you began, and then maybe what do you currently outsource or reach out to now, or research that is helpful?
Yeah, I think the thing for me was, just talking to other people in the community. And back in the day, there weren't a lot of other women on board. We had a couple friends that we tendered with whose wives were also on board, and they became like my at sea moms. And gave me a lot of advice. And now we have, because we do have 3 boats now, and a few years ago we turned things over to a management company, because as I have said, I went to cooking school. I didn't go to accounting school. And once payroll's a big deal, when you're working with the IRS and the state of Alaska. And it just got to the point where it was too overwhelming for me. And, we found a really great management company, and they do a lot of our day-to-day operations now. And it works. And we do pay them a fee, but it's worth it to have everything done right.
Absolutely. And could you clarify for me, what does that mean? What is like a day-to-day thing that they manage? What are they, besides the payroll? Is there other?
So there's payroll and bills that come up. They do the monthly bill paying, pretty much everything that I tried to do. That Pat was super good at. And so day-to-day bill paying, they make sure that our permits are all in order, our fisheries permits are all in order, our Coast Guard letters are all up to order, up to date, just a lot of that. And it was manageable with 1 boat. And but when we got to 3, and at that time Sean was fishing, and it was just, he wasn't available all the time to help me out. And we both just agreed that it was time to turn things over to a management company.
That's fascinating. I didn't even know that existed for boats. And so was the management company, are they specific to commercial fishing, or they just they are specific?
They're specific to commercial fishing. And actually a friend of ours was sitting at a bar with him one beautiful summer night, and he's like, "You're still doing the day-to-day stuff. You need to call this guy."
Nice.
And so that was impetus to that.
Okay, nice. Okay. Yeah. Feeling lighter already, knowing that there's people out there that can do this and that understand fishing, because that's a whole other thing.
That's it for today, POCFs. I'm bringing Jenny back next week to discuss more about money and building a fishing business. We also discuss her work with the ALS Therapy Development Institute and how that touched their families' lives and how that legacy of her husband, Pat, lives on through their businesses, including adding a third boat to the fleet and how that decision was made. We also discussed how Pat's legacy lives on through their beautiful family, her children, her daughter-in-law, and her sweet granddaughter. I mean, what more could you want? Family, commercial fishing businesses, and, learning how to thrive together. That's what it's all about. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for listening. To support our community, I'd so appreciate it if you'd tap the subscribe button to this podcast or write a review. And if you're a POCF who wants to connect further, go to POCFpride.com for weekly blogs and to learn about opportunities to join our private communities. We'd love to have you.